Okay, I'll be continuing now with Unit 11 with Parak Daled, Mishnah Daled. This Mishnah deals with a number of details of the way that the Avodah was done on Yom Kippur. Obviously, it's what we've been talking about the whole time, and specifically a contrast between the normal ways Avodah was done on a regular day of the year, basically every day of the year, except for Yom Kippur. And of course, the importance is some of the priorities that were given to Yom Kippur, and the reasons for that. Some of them we've already discussed, some of them we have not. Of the different ways that we'd be asking the Kohen Gadol to the Avodah on Yom Kippur. So the Mishnah starts out talking about what we were just left off with, if you recall, at the end of Unit 10, the Mishnah, at the end of Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah described the Kohen would go up to the Mizbeach and would bring down some of the hot coals in order to be used soon for the ketoret, for the spices that would be brought as part of the offering for Yom Kippur. So once talking about that, it's describing some of the details of the vessels that were used for that and for some of the other areas on Yom Kippur. So Mishnah begins, Mishnah Daled, B'chol Yom, on every day, meaning every day of the year, aside from Yom Kippur, Haya choteh b'shel kasef, he would scoop the coals with a shovel made of kasef, made of silver, u'me'areh, and then he would empty out that shovel b'toch shel zahav, into one that was made of gold. So that was a normal day. Again, b'chol yom, every day, hayachoteh b'shel kasef. He would, the word choteh we had in the previous Mishnah as well, where he was clearing out the gechalim. He was pushing away the ones he didn't want for the optimal ones that were inside, that were the hottest ones. So hayachoteh would push away b'shel kasef. Excuse me, that was a mistake. He would scoop up. He would in fact push away the other ones. But the word choteh is not what that means. That was in the previous Mishnah. We learned first he pushed away the gechalim on top, and then he was choteh. He scooped up the ones that were the best in the middle. So that's how he would do it. And every day he would be choteh. He would scoop up b'shal kasef, using a shovel made of silver, u'me'areh b'toch shel zahav, and then he would take that shovel made of silver and he would pour it into a shovel made of gold. So that was a normal avodah. He'd have to take from one shovel made of silver, pour it into one made of gold. But the Mishnah continues, v'hayom, but today, on Yom Kippur, choteh b'shel zahav, he would in fact shovel with the golden one, uba haya machnis, and with that he would bring the ketoret with on that same shovel itself. Mefarshim explained that on a normal day, so we didn't want to use gold in order to scoop up the coals, because that would wear away at the gold rather quickly. Gold is obviously more expensive. I believe earlier you mentioned the rule that in general, chasa hamakom amonam sheYisrael, Hashem has mercy, has patience, has a better word, has concern, certainly, for the mammon, for the money of Bnei Yisrael. Hashem doesn't want us to wastefully spend money and not to be able to have enough money, even for doing a good cause. And therefore, in the Beit HaMikdash, so true, gold is of course the most beautiful thing to use, but to use the gold in order to pick up the coals would end up wearing away at the gold very quickly, and that we don't normally have to do. On a regular day, on Yom Kippur though, so again, the Kohen Gadol were concerned. He was up all night, as we learned, and he has a tremendous amount of work to do. He has all the avodah that was normally done by other Kohanim, he's doing today, in addition to the special avodah of Yom Kippur. We don't want to overstrain him, and therefore we tell him that go ahead and use a golden shovel for the entire process. That's the first difference the Mishnah says. Then the Mishnah continues, B'chol yom, choteh b'shel daled kabin, u'me'areh b'toch shel shloshet kabin. On a regular day, he would scoop up using a shovel. Again, that was a silver shovel. That's not the type of metal isn't what's important for us now, but rather the amount. He would scoop up using a shovel, which is arba kabin, which is 4 kabin. A kav is an amount around 2 liters, I believe, and he would take that amount of coals, and he would pour it. He would take 3 kabin, 6 liters, 3 kabin, and pour it. Let's start again. He would take 4, and pour it betoch shel shosha kabin, into a shovel that holds 3. Now, obviously, if you start with 4 and pour it into something that holds only 3, you're going to end up with an extra kav that's going to spill out onto the floor. And in fact, that's what happened. And they would take that kav and they would push it away and wash it up, and that would be fine. And that was a normal way of doing things. You end up obviously sure that you have 3 kabin. You take a little bit extra, and that way you're sure that you have 3. That would be on a normal day. But today on Yom Kippur, chotah b'shel shloshet kabin, uva haya machnis. He would, in fact, be chotah with 3 kabin. He would scoop out only 3, and those 3 he would be machnis. He would take those 3 and bring those in to be used for the ketoret as the part of the avodah, which is of course the ketoret. There was no extra. Again, this is a similar idea. We don't want the kohen to have to carry extra things. He'd have to be careful not to spill, but he would have 3 and 3, and that way he wouldn't have to carry that extra carbon. Yosi omer b'chol yom choteh b'shel sa'ah. Every day, in fact, it wasn't 4 kabin that he would scoop out. Rather, it was a sa'ah. A sa'ah is the equivalent of 6 kabin, so it was a little bit more. So he says you start with 6, and you end up with 3. Obviously, you have 3 left over that are going to spill on the floor. But he agrees on Yom Kippur, that everyone agrees on, that on Yom Kippur you would have 3 kabin, and you'd start with 3 kabin, and you'd end with 3 kabin. You wouldn't do any pouring. You wouldn't do any pouring on Yom Kippur as you would on a regular day. Okay, so those are the first 2 points, seemingly connected to one another, because you're not having 2 separate shovels. You're having one, only the golden one, not a silver and a gold one. We're not going to worry about wearing the gold for one day of the year. So therefore, you can carry with only one. You don't have to take one and pour into another. You have that one. You're not doing any pouring, and so therefore you're only going to have 3 kabin. Mishnah continues, B'chol yom hayta kveda, v'hayom kala. On every day it was heavy, meaning that kli was a heavy kli, was made of a thick material, and therefore very heavy. And hayom, today on Yom Kippur, it was kala, it was a light, it was a much thinner material. So there, of course, the heavier kli would seem to be more respectful, more more serious, more significant. And on a regular day, in fact, you would have the kohen carry a heavier kli. But today on Yom Kippur, again, out of concern for the kohen gadol, you would have him do a lighter kli. Next, b'chol yom hayta yada kitsara, and every day the handle was short, meaning the handle on the kli to hold the coals within the shovel. So it was a short handle. V'hayom aruka. But today, meaning on Yom Kippur, it was much longer. The idea being that if you have a long handle, you're able to hold on to the part that's closest to where the coals are, and put another part under your underarm in order to support it as well. So that way you're able to have a little extra support. If the kohen is tired, he's already done quite a bit of avodah, he has a lot left ahead of him. Just to hold it might be more difficult, take more of his energy. If it was just like a small pot, picture like a frying pan of ours, it would be easier if you'd have, again, a frying pan with a long handle, being able to put the handle under your arm, as well as holding it with your hand. That way it would be easier to support, and that's, in fact, this special mechta of Yom Kippur would look like that. B'chol yom haya shel zahava yarok. Every day it was made of It was made up of, I lost a place here. It was made up of gold that was yellow. V'hayom adom. Divrei Rabbi Menachem. So Menachem adds, you have a different type of metal, a different type of gold, different grade of gold, a different style of gold, whatever the difference was, for this day of Yom Kippur as well. In addition to all the other differences, you'd have a special kind of color over here. The Mefarshim discuss that this is a very, very special, elevated kind of a gold, not used every day. But on Yom Kippur, out of respect for the day, we had a special kind of gold that we didn't normally have. So it's a different concern, not necessarily easier for the Kohen Gadol, but just something that was considered more mehudar. Finally, we have B'chol Yom Makriv Pras B'Shacharit Upras Bein Ha'arbayim. On every day he would bring half of the Ketoret, the incense in the morning, and Pras Bein Ha'arbayim, and half in the afternoon. As we've discussed earlier, the Korban Tamid was brought every single day. In addition to the animal that was brought in the Korban Tamid, there's also Ketoret, there are also spices that we saw way back in the Mishnayot earlier. So, you have half in the morning, half in the afternoon. V'hayom, that is true, but you also add something else in Yom Kippur, Mosif Melo Chafnav. He would have to add on an extra amount of Ketoret, which was the size of his hands. If he'd cup his hands, hold his hands together, and fill that up with Ketoret, that was the amounts of Ketoret he would have to bring on the Mizbech, and he would be adding that amount of Ketoret for this day of Yom Kippur. And then finally the Mishnah ends, B'chol Yom Hayta Daka. Every day he would take the Ketoret, make it very fine, he would break up all the spices into very fine pieces. V'hayom Daka min hadaka batei. It was fine of the fine. It was even more well broken up. Again, the idea being that today being Yom Kippur, you want the finest quality of the Ketoret, and therefore you would make it the grinding up of the Ketoret even more special, even more fine, to make it a greater offering. That is the end of Mishnah Dalet. So again, all of these are just a review. The idea here is, since we're talking about him going on to Mizbeach, so now we talk about the differences of how it would go on the Mizbeach, how that was done on Yom Kippur versus other days, and then we go into some of the other differences. The one main theme you can get here again is making sure the avodah is not too difficult for the Kohen Gadol. You have to make sure he's able to handle the entire work of the entire day. Keep in mind, the Kohen Gadol could often be an older man. Assuming he's worthy of being Kohen Gadol by the time you get there and you get to that level. Presumably you're not very young, and therefore you want to make sure that he's able to handle all this. So we discussed the differences between how much gechalim he would take, about the nature of the kli that he would use. Was it gold? Was it silver? Today they're just being today, meaning Yom Kippur, being just one golden shovel, and that one he's able to use without any pouring. The amount would be less. It would be lighter. The handle would be made in such a way he'd be able to hold it more carefully, and it would be made out of material that was more mifu'ar, more decorated, more special. And of course, the Ketoret itself, there was extra Ketoret he had to take in order to bring in the Kodesh HaKodashim eventually, and it was ground up in an even finer way than usual in honor of Yom Kippur.